I did cut one joint, and I wasn't terribly pleased with this. And when I went and took a look at why, it was because I got quite a bit of a tear out in my cross cutting of these pieces, and I wasn't paying attention to that because I cut these in order to make these joints. I wasn't all that concerned about the edge. Well, now they're too short the joint, or are they? Hey, Scott from MyGrowthRings.com here once again is in my sister's basement, my temporary shop. And welcome back. So we're going to continue on talking a little bit more about the Shopsmith Joint-Matic. In full disclosure, I am not feeling well at all, so I'm not going to make this a long lesson. What I will say is, for the very first time this week, I used one of those teledoctor experiences, where you call in and they use your iPad or your computer to interact with you, and because they're not there, they have you poke on things to see if they can determine your symptoms. It really wasn't all that bad until we got to the prostate part, and that I'm not a big fan of. Anyway, I should be on the mend. Also, want to mention there was a lot of folks that commented on when can they get mugs. So we now have mugs available, and that's the last promotion I'll give. Unless, of course, you're a channel member or even a board of director, in which case you have your own links to unique mugs. One quick note to make, you can buy them in different sizes. So when you go to the link, it takes you to Zazzle, and you can select the style of mug. You can even change the color of the mug if you like. One person even purchased a stainless steel travel mug, which I think is pretty slick too. So anyway, check that out if you are interested. So let's talk about the Joint-Matic a little further. One of the things that you can do with pretty much any horizontal routing setup, you could even mount a router and a piece of plywood that you clamp to the edge of your workbench. Any of them can do a decent job of mortising and tenoning. Let me show you how we do this on the Joint-Matic. But as I started to prepare this, and to be honest with you, I did cut one joint, and I wasn't terribly pleased with this. And when I went and took a look at why, it was because I got quite a bit of a tear out in my cross cutting of these pieces, and I wasn't paying attention to that because I cut these in order to make these joints. I wasn't all that concerned about the edge. Well, now they're too short the joint, or are they? I was also playing around with the snap check, very inexpensive digital gauge that we use to set the knives on the jointer. And I thought this would be kind of cool to play around with here on the Joint-Matic for getting the depth of that router bit set just right. Right now I have it set for fractions of an inch, and you can see if we give this one complete turn, we are at a 1/16 of an inch. 2, 3, 4. We are reading 1/4 inch. Can you see that? So try that again. I'll give this 4 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are reading 1/4 of an inch. Now we can set this for for millimeters, right? Or we can set this to read inches, not in fractions, but in decimal points. So we got 0.25 there. But turns out can be a very handy tool. My only frustration with this, same as when I was using this on the jointer, is the fact that it doesn't have magnets. This is made of plastic. And based on whether there's sawdust or if you're holding it down firmly, you may change your reading. So you just kind of got to plant yourself so you're getting the exact same pressure as you adjust it. Other than that, it seems to be very accurate, at least accurate enough. So how does a jointer work exactly? Well, a jointer works by having a blade that's set to the exact same height as the outfeed table, and then an infeed table that is lower than the blade in the outfeed table. So if you take a piece of stock, imagine this is a jointer, if you will, for a moment. If you lay a piece of stock on the table, and let's say this is a 1/16 of an inch lower than the blade and the outfeed table, as I feed my stock across the cutter and over to the outfeed side, it will remove a 1/16 of an inch. Well, guess what? We can do that with the Joint-Matic as well. All we have to do is raise the bit some set height, some height that we know, and add something to the surface on this side that is equal to that thickness. Now, if I had it here, I would use fast cap, what do they call that stuff? The fast edge, just peel and stick plastic laminate. It's nice and slick. goes down 1 inch wide, and I can remove it really quickly when I'm done doing it. I don't have that here, but what I do have is I have some masking tape. And check this out. If I put down a couple strips of masking tape here, make sure that we go down into the slot so we're not creating any kind of a ramp here. And I only need 3/4 of an inch of this, so my wood isn't going to encounter that little buckle. And let's add another layer here. Turns out that's a 64th of an inch higher there. 2 strips of tape, a 64th of an inch. I get a 16th of an inch for every turn here. Half of a 16th would be a 32nd. Half of a 32nd of an inch would be a 64th of an inch. So a quarter turn is a 64th of an inch taller than this in-feed side. Let's see if this works. You can see here I do have a sawn edge. Ideally, if you're going to do this, you need to use a spiral bit. The bigger the diameter, the better this is going to perform. I'm using a 1/4 inch diameter. That's just going to be okay. But let's give this a try. And we still, just like on a regular joiner, we need to kind of pay attention to the wood grain. It's kind of hard to tell on this edge. Over here, it's pretty clear. I don't know if you saw what I was doing, but just like with the joiner, I apply downward pressure here on the in-feed side of the table. I do that not applying any pressure over this opening. And then once I get enough material over here that's been cut, I then kind of shift the focus of my downward pressure onto this outfeed table, just like with the joiner. And you can see here, got a little bit of fuzziness, but a much nicer burnished edge than what we had. Okay, let's do the same. Here's a side-by-side comparison. See if we can get the light to hit that just right. Bottom is the one we just jointed. Top one has got saw marks on it. So let's do the same with this piece. Again, I'm not entirely sure what this wood is telling me. It's very odd. And no downward pressure at all with this backhand. You don't want to be pushing down here because you're just going to create a snipe if you're not careful. Much better. All right, let's just do this down and dirty. Ideally, you want as square pieces as you can get. While these are not perfectly square, I just chopped these on the chop saw here a minute or two ago. And I'm going to give myself a reference point, let's say about 1/4 of an inch in. That's a little more than 1/4, but we're going to go with that. And we're going to produce a mortise here, and we'll produce a tenon on this side, taking those 2 cheeks off. So we're going to make sure we have the bit extended the depth we need it to be, and with it right now below the table, we're going to come up 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a 1/4 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, or call it 5, 6, 7, 8. That should be the center of 3/4 inch stock. Now, if I turn this on and plunge into it, I certainly could drill to that depth, but side-to-side action on a 1/4 inch bit that's extended as far as that is, which is a little bit, just a hair more than 3/4 of an inch, is going to be too shaky. And so I really should make this in a couple cuts. I could set the depth lower, and let's say I'm making a face frame or doors. I could come along and make the first cut on both ends of all of my stiles, set the depth further, come back, do it again, set the depth further, come back and do it again. What I'm going to do here is cheat a little bit, and I've got some 1/4-inch spacers. Ideally, I could make these permanent. If I made these the length of this bed and have them kind of hook over the edges of the bed, that would be better. And there's even places where we can run bolts through the uprights here on the Joint-Matic. But I'll just do my best to kind of hold that in place. So I'm extending right now about 1/4 of an inch beyond these two pieces, and I'm going to plunge in ahead of this line. So I want to route between these two lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plunge in, and I'm going to pull it backwards. I'm going to do a little bit of climb cutting, just a little bit, feeding the wood into the bit in the direction the bit would like me to feed it. I don't do this from very far, but I'm going to control this by anchoring the piece here and plunging in. So it's going to go a little something like this. Now I am simply eyeballing, looking down from overhead and eyeballing where that bit begins and ends. I could put stops in place. I could put marks here on my table to be even more accurate. But again, for this demonstration, this is close enough. Now we'll lose one of these spacers and we'll do the same. As I said, there's nothing fancy about that. This is stuff that we've done, most of us, with a router table where you're lowering it straight down onto a bit. The advantage of doing it here with the router horizontally mounted, whether it's a Joint-Matic or something you build yourself, is that your lumber is laying flat and you're not fighting gravity trying to keep it up on the edge. And that's, for me, the rule of thumb. The jointer is the only tool that I like to feed my stock on its edge. Every other tool is normally used with the stock laying flat on the table. Now let's cut a tenon. We're going to come down 1, 2, 3, 4. That now should be equal to the distance from the bottom to that cheek of our mortise. However, if I make this cut in one pass, I'm going to get a lot of tear out along this face. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. So basically I'm 1/16 of an inch above the table. And I'm going to go ahead and make all 4 cuts. Go all the way around this piece. And this is where the fact that this isn't perfectly square is going to show up. So now I have all of my shoulders cut, and if I look carefully, I can see there is a slight step on some of these corners, and that happens if that stock isn't perfectly square. Imagine the stock is this far out of square, you would have an angle across that cheek and that shoulder. Okay, here we have a decision to make. I can either raise that up 1/4 of an inch and go all the way around all 4 sides. Or I can raise it up 1/4 of an inch, make my cut, and then raise it up all the way to the top and make my cut across the top, ensuring that my tenon is 1/4 of an inch. If I take a cut and flip it over, any variation in the thickness of my stock will introduce that error into the size of my tenon. So if my stock is thicker than 3/4 of an inch, my tenon will be thicker than 1/4 inch. If my stock is thinner, it'll be thinner. So we just make this decision at this point. Right now we are cutting a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3 turns. I'm going to make a 1/4 inch cut. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and cut this face, and this face to its final depth. Then we'll crank it up and we'll cut it off to exactly 1/4 of an inch across the top. So here we go. All right, now that that shoulder's a little wider, you can see my error right there. All right, so let's go ahead. If we crank this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would remove the tenon. 1, 2, 3, 4 will leave a 1/4 inch tenon. At this point, I'm climb feeding. So you could argue that it would be safer and better to feed the stock from this side of the Joint-Matic to make this cut. Go ahead and argue that while I make this cut. Now, the question is, will it fit? At this point, because I was just eyeballing, it looks like my tenon is just a little bit fat here. So I need to crank this down and take a little bit more off of these faces. And check out that fit. All right, let's see if we can line up. At this point, I need to take the corners off of my tenon just slightly. So I can either round it off, or I can do what I usually do, and that is just reach into my pocket and grab my pocket knife or use a chisel and knock those corners off. All right, we would apply our glue here, make sure there's no tear out that's going to create any gaps, and then drive that joint together. So with a mortise and tenon joint like this, we are well on our way to making maybe a face frame for a cabinet. Very, very strong. With pocket screws, a lot of folks have moved away from making mortise and tenon joints, but it's a quick, easy way that doesn't require additional fasteners, and it's super strong. And we're also well on our way to making a raised panel door. I mean, we could cut a groove in here, then all we have to do is raise the panel. We're going to do both of those things next week when we come back and finish up learning about the Shopsmith Joint-Matic. In the meantime, make it a great day.